camera over. Don't knock that over. Hey. There's nothing to eat over there. Knock my camera over. God, you guys are crazy. Will you stop it with the camera? Stop it. Would you stop it? Oh, there's a teeny bit of hay up on there. Dummies. There. Ugh. Is that what you wanted? Ugh. No? It's cold out here. Stop eating the tripod. So, I just wanted to tell everybody that a lot has changed here in the last couple days. The high-speed internet service has now arrived at Whispering Pines. So, I am so excited that I actually started crying when the installer was here because of what that means to our lifestyle and the things that we can do. So, for example, while I'm sitting here working, I have Lisa's vlog playing on my laptop, which I used to have to watch all these things on my little mobile phone screen. And when it's done, I'm going to be able to go in and type comments, which I was always restricted because I don't really do the thumb typing all that well, and I pretty much hate it. So now I can just watch it and then comment on how lovely her videos are, which they are. But just a million different things already. You know, the blog posts are so easy. I can just download pictures and post them on the blog. I mean, little things that I think people don't realize really limited us. I am going to be researching the wireless cameras for the barn, the smart cameras where I'll be able to, use them from my phone. Just crazy, the stuff. But just wanted to share that because I know I've kind of hinted in videos up until today that it's coming and the installers are, in the neighborhood and stuff, but it's happened here, so just really excited and I wanted to share. I decided that I wanted to challenge myself. Now that I've got the lace kit set up on my rows, I want to challenge myself to see how much yardage I can get with a certain amount of wool. And I got this idea from a lace spinner that I met earlier last year. And she talked about this whole thing you do as a lace spinner. So what I want to do is before I do any training or discussions or interviewing any lace spinners, I'm going to take the lace kit and just by feel spin up. I'm going to do 2 bobbins of 1/2 ounce each and ply those into a 2-ply lace weight and just see how much yardage I can get. Now, I know I've been saying that I have no wool left, but I found some wool that's washed that I kind of set aside as just being a little too short and fiddly to spend a lot of time carding. But it actually will work perfectly fine for what I'm trying to accomplish here. There's quite a bit of wool here. It's extremely soft. And it's from a ewe that we don't have in the flock anymore. Her name is Caitlin. That was my Game of Thrones here. And this is her lock. Let's see, I got this darker colored thing here. Let's see. Short lock structure, but after you flick at it, it gets a little bit longer. So I'm going to spin from the lock. And that's going to be just a choice I'm going to make. And I'll do that in my after skein because I'm going to do 2. I'm going to do one before I do any research, talking, or anything, just using my lace kit on my rows. And then I'll do another one after, but I'm going to use the same wool and do it from the lock. This is actually the Carter cover that I got from one of my viewers. It's really sweet. Now doubling as my backdrop for the fiber locks. So yeah, so really beautiful and fine. So this will be fun. And I'm not putting much effort into making sure that I've got all the same color. Normally if I'm spinning for yarns, I'll try and make sure they're all the same color. But you can see I've got some darker locks in here. And that's just because of, I've talked about cat get fleeces before. Some of the wool is darker than others on the same fleece. So, get to 1/2 ounce, and then I will spin it up and just measure the length after I wash it, and we'll see what I get. Well, I'm working on this. I'm watching this movie Intern with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro, and it's so adorable. I'm really enjoying it. I've seen it before, but I forgot a lot of it, so it's gonna be fun. I think I might, it's gonna probably take me another hour to get a full ounce carded up. So I'm just gonna give you an update on what my current obsession. So I'm here with Caroline, and Caroline has agreed to talk to me today about lace spinning. She and I met about a year ago online and kind of struck up a conversation about lace weight, and she actually bought some fine Shetland wool from us and a lace kit also. And so I wanted to just touch base back with her since I've installed the lace kit on my wheel, just to get maybe some advice or ideas of how to go even thinner than what I'm spinning now. So welcome, Caroline, and thank you for offering to talk to us today.
Thank you. It's delightful to meet you.
Great. So let's just jump right in with the first question I have, which is, what is lace yarn? What does that mean when you say that you're spinning lace? Like,
When you're spinning lace weight yarn, it's generally considered to be a weight of yarn like DK or worsted or whatever. Usually considered to be less than 18 wraps per inch. So you'll have something like this here. This is a yarn gauge. Let me see if I can get that lined up. And
looks good.
One side gives you from 18 or so to about 40 wraps per inch this way. Okay, and then this one gives you from 50 wraps per inch up to 200.
Let it sit there for a second.
This one is from Jellybeans Yarns in the UK. It's one of the finest measures that I've seen so far, although I did just order one that goes up to 80 wraps per inch from Hipstrings.
Okay, so what this is saying is if once that blue strand is all the way across, I don't understand how to read that.
Per inch. No, this one says do 20 wraps and see how far it goes. So you're doing like a wraps per inch, but in this case, it specifies 20 wraps.
I see.
And on this side, it says 10 wraps. So this is similar to a wraps per inch, but it's giving you a total for the wraps instead of saying an inch.
That way, then you don't have to wrap 200 times or whatever, right? Is that the purpose of it?
Yeah. In this one over here.
Can you hold it back up, Caroline?
This one, yeah, it has a line that shows you how far you wrap. It says if you wrap this far, I haven't even unwrapped it. You can see the lines go. Which way are we going? Here we go. There.
I see. Okay, I understand.
Vertical lines. So you wrap until you get to that vertical line, and then you count. And if you get like what's on the bottom, 50. If you get 50 wraps up to that vertical line, then it's 50 wraps per inch. Or yeah. But so this doesn't require you to wrap an entire inch. So in that case, if you're doing something that could take 200 wraps per inch, you don't want to sit there and wrap 200 times. You just want to see if it's going to make it. So this is usually lace weight yarn measures 18 wraps per inch or less. They do have other names they use for it. Once it starts getting really, really thin, like frog hair is one of the things, then you start doing things like this is actually this is a crochet cotton that was wrapped around the thread gauge to show you how to use it. But usually we measure up against things like sewing thread, just for fun. Just for fun. It's just the ones who are just a little OCD among us.
Yeah.
Like, how much thinner can you go?
Now, what about cobweb? Is that also a lace?
Cobweb is a lace, yes. Yep. Lace weight, cobweb, thread weight. All names. It just depends on how fine you go. I don't think there's an actual category for cobweb weight. There might be. The only cobweb that I know that's being commercially produced right now is, I think, from Jameson and Smith in the Shetland Isles. And so some of the things you need to produce lace weight yarn that you have to take into consideration is that if you're is the fiber, first of all. So it has to come from a fine wool sheep. Traditionally, the wedding ring shawls of the Shetland Isles were made from the neck fleece of these Shetland sheep. So you would take your finest fleeced sheep and take only the finest neck wool from that sheep to make the yarn for the wedding ring shawls.
And why is it called a wedding ring shawl?
Because it can be pulled through a wedding ring. So the entire shawl can actually fit through a wedding ring. Because the yarn is that fine. Yes, it's not easy to knit lace that fine. But if you ever need to knit lace that fine, Haya has needles that go down to, I think, 7 zeros, like 0, 0, 0, 0.
That's like spinning. That's like toothpicks or something.
Oh, it is. It's, yes, very much so. Really, really, really thin. I own them all. I haven't used them, but you never know when you might want to. So you can spin lace weight on a wheel, and if you're like you were talking about your lace kit, so you need to be able to spin really, really, really fast, because you want to build up twist in that yarn. This is the lace flyer from that kit. It has ceramic inside the hooks, so that it's not going to cause any abrasion or heat buildup on the yarn. It's also narrower than the other flyer that's on the Majacraft wheels, so that the yarn does not have to travel as far to get onto the bobbin. So you're mitigating the chance of it breaking somewhere there.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. I didn't understand the reason for that, so that makes sense to me. Okay.
Now this is a standard bobbin that I was spinning on. And in the past, what I have done is I have put foam core insulation. I'm not even sure if I can get down there because there are several layers on here. Foam core insulation onto the main part of the bobbin to make it fatter, because that changes the amount of draw in, the amount of tension you need to wind onto the bobbin. So
you want less tension?
You want much less tension, because when you're spinning a really, really, really fine yarn, it doesn't take much to break it. So the least amount of tension you can use to create the draw in you need is what you want. That's what the back core bobbin gives us.
Okay, because I was thinking about that while I was spinning, and I was thinking about when I'm using a standard core, how much you have to tighten it as you get more wool on the bobbin, right? And that sort of talks to that, but you don't want it real tight. You don't want a real
No, you want to maintain the least amount of tension you need to have it draw onto the bobbin.
Okay.
Without creating the little pigtails, because it was held back too long, right? So you see the little pigtails. So there's one of the little pigtails.
Yeah, I've got a lot of that in mine.
Yeah. So you need enough so that it's being drawn on smoothly without leaving any of those pigtails. But at the same time, you don't want it so hard that it's going to break the yarn.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's the core, or the bobbin, and the flyer.
Yeah, the core bobbin, but we can also spin really, really fine lace weight on spindles. So there are some spindles that happen to be like absolute featherweight, and this is one of them. This is from an Etsy shop, Bully Woolens or something. I forget. This is a trindle. If you can, I don't know. Can we see that trindle? It's got those three.
Yeah.
This is another Bully Woolens, and this is, I mean, they weigh somewhere in the grams. They measure these in grams because they're so lightweight. But that means that you're not putting a lot of pressure on the yarn as you're making it. And this one, can we even get it? This one is really, really, really thin.
Oh my word.
Yes. And it's on that. So I love these spindles because they weigh nothing. They're seriously absolute featherweight.
They look like a model of the solar system or something, you know?
These actually come with a bunch of different size rubber beads. And you can change out the rubber beads to give you the total spindle weight that you want. So it comes with an entire set of these rubber beads that fit. Now this one doesn't have any rubber beads on it. You can see these little spokes. So you can change those out to give it more weight or less weight. In this case, no extra weight here.
So Caroline, let me ask you a question. This was not on my list, but I didn't even know what a trindle was. Do you calculate something before you start spinning to know how much weight, or do you just kind of try at different weights until you come to something that works well?
Well, with the bullies, I would go with the lightest ones. That's what I did here. I didn't calculate anything. I just put the lightest ones on there. This one, I left it empty because I'm going to try that next. I
Okay.
haven't done any of that. This one,
Ooh.
yeah. So there are some other ones out there. This one is 7.7 grams. I actually wrote that on the staff of the spindle here.
Wow.
But yeah, so this one is actually, that's a nice thin one too. Yeah, you want to look for something like in the single digit grams.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like really super fine lace weight spindles out there. So I have more experience probably spinning as much anyways on a spindle. I started on a spindle back in, let me see, how old is my youngest? 1997. So back in about 1997, I was introduced to this at a farm and forest expo, and I saw somebody spinning, and I bought a spindle, and I got like a 5-minute lesson right there on the sales floor, and had to learn on my own because there was no internet, at least not the internet that we know today. So there were
Right.
no YouTube videos. I didn't know the existence of any books. I didn't know of the existence of Spin-Off magazine until I found it like in Barnes and Noble one day, and it was like, oh, there was nothing. There was no community built around this because we were all isolated by our lack. The internet has given us that. Has given us a community that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Can you imagine going through this last year without the internet? I mean,
no,
just crazy.
not.
Crazy. All right, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about spinning techniques, like actual draw methods and stuff like that. So what are the optimal techniques for getting a good lace weight?
Is to get as few threads, as few fibers as possible in this drafting zone. Okay, so some people can actually see well enough to get like 4 or 5 or 6 threads in the drafting zone, and to keep it at that, to work on the consistency of getting that 4, 5, or 6. Theoretically, the fewest number you can have and still spin it and have it be called yarn is 3 fibers. I can't see 3 fibers on this. It's not possible for me, not without some magnification. Wasn't blessed with great vision. I can go like this and put it like right up to my face. And
so it might be helpful to have like a contrasting background as you're spinning.
Totally.
Color.
Yes, I have this. So I have a white towel, and okay, I have a white towel. But if you can put this over your lap, this gives you some place not only for the chaff to fall out if there is any, but it gives you some contrasting background for you to be able to see how many fibers or how thick the fiber is that you're spinning from.
It's probably important to have a sense for how long each fiber is as well. Is that something that you think about or look at before you start spinning?
It's not a consideration in picking a fleece for spinning fine because it's getting so thin. But yes, this is something that you have to do every time you start spinning at all. So this one, if I pull this out, this is actually fairly long. Okay, so this, you're going to have a long drafting triangle in there because otherwise you're just pulling on both ends of the fiber and it's not going to draft at all. This is something I used to tell people when I used to teach drop spindle spinning. So if you are trying to create a drafting triangle, you have to know how long it is so that you can draft it. Otherwise, you're pulling on 2 ends of a rope and it's not going to move. So here's another one. This is what do we have here? Yak and cultivated silk, luxury fiber top. So I have all of my measurements written on here so that I will know when I get done. There's always some waste.
What's that 14? What does that number mean? What does it signify?
14.37 grams. That's the
Oh,
weight.
okay.
Okay, 5.506 ounces. 0.50.
Okay. Well, let's see the fiber. Show.
This one does not have a micron count on it, but I mean, it's yak. So that runs fairly fine. So this is the fiber. And if I pull it out, oh, look at that. If I pull it out, this is considerably shorter than the purple one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really short,
Mm-hmm.
but it is considerably shorter than the purple one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you have to know that because otherwise you're going to be drafting right past your drafting zone and it's going to drift apart, or you're going to be trying to pull on both ends and it's not going to move at all.
Okay, so one of the things I was doing that I think based on what you said and just watching you as you were spinning, you know, I just taught myself long draw spinning.
Ooh.
And so I was doing that. What's that?
That's a whole different beast.
Yeah, but
that's controlling the drafting triangle from much farther away.
So I was kind of using like a hybrid of that, and then kind of what I saw you doing, where your hands were a little bit closer together. So I think what I'm going to do is modify the way I'm doing it now and just consistently keep my hands closer together, because I think, you know, my fibers are on the shorter side, you know.
On the shorter side being Shetland, right?
Yeah, so like the stuff I'm spinning right now is about 3 inches flicked out.
Do you do micron counts on your sheep?
Yes, absolutely.
That's wonderful. So you take the finest micron count, and then you take the neck fleece from that sheep when it's sheared.
Yeah.
You'll lose a lot because that's the chaff zone. But we all know that even if you coat your sheep, that's the chaff zone.
Yep.
So this one is a Falklands wool dyed top. I have a thing for rainbows.
Oh, pretty.
So,
yeah.
Yes, I really have a thing for rainbows. I love rainbows. The more colors you can get in there. So this one, if we pull it, okay. So that's actually not terribly long either. So we can start drafting that. This is Falklands, and I would not try a lace spin with this because this is going to be a higher micron count than Shetland, probably. There are some breeds that are known for their fine micron counts. Among CVM, Merino, Charlie Fleece, Cormo is another really good one. Corriedale, any of those crosses in there, Rambouillet. And even then, you know, you're looking as a sheep breeder yourself, you know, you're looking at the variations within the breed that they go from this one to this one. They're not all going to be fine fleeces, but the finer the fleece, the finer the micron count, that's the finer the diameter of the yarn. So that's going to play hugely into how thin you can get your yarn. Because if you're starting with one that's that thick, then it's not going to give you a lace weight yarn to start with.
Right.
So you have things like Navajo Churro and what is it, Black Mountain, that are coarse fleeces or coarser fleeces. The Black Welsh Mountain is probably the coarsest stuff I've ever touched.
Yeah.
Herdwick too is another one that's really coarse, and they have their uses. If you spin those up, they make fantastic carpet work. They wear like iron. You know, you put them on the floor on them for decades, but it's not something that you'd want to be making a lace weight scarf out of.
Right. So can you talk a little bit, I think I'm going to get this wrong again, but the longest yarn or whatever?
Thread competition. The longest thread competition. Okay, there's a website for this. It's called the Bothwell Spin-In is the group that holds the longest thread competition. And if you look at, I'll send you this link afterwards, bothwellspinin.com.au. So it's in Australia. It's actually held in Tasmania. It's held every other year. Because of the shipping distance, the submission deadline for this year has passed, even though the spin-in is not held until March. If it's coming from the United States, they request you mail it, I believe, by the end of October the year before. So it would have been October of 2020. would have been the mailing deadline for that. There's actually a group on Ravelry that focuses specifically on the longest thread competition. And there's a lot of people who talk about ways to get that fine. Sue McNiven, who is, I believe, in Scotland, has won it. And she has a presence on Ravelry and has done a really good job. So currently, okay, longest thread 2019 results on the webpage says from the previous one, let me see if I can find some. Naoko Tomoro of Japan got 1,442 yards. So the premise of the competition is you start with 10 grams.
10 grams, okay.
A third of an ounce of fiber, and your challenge is to get the longest 2-ply yarn from this 10 grams. So this person apparently with a spindle got over 1,400 yards of 2-ply yarn, which means that, you know, the single had to be that much finer.
Does it say what breed she used or anything? Does it give you any details?
No, it just says Japan and spindle. Ernest Jensen of Australia spun 1,210 yards using a, oh, so this is the on the website, the total, the world records.
Oh, okay.
So 2005 was Naoko Tomoro's winning length in spindle competition. So they have expanded it over the years. It used to be just wheel spun or spindle spun. So they had both categories. And it used to be wool, and they had wool that was broken down into categories of dark wool and white wool, because dark wool, as some people know, has a generally a larger fiber diameter and has a higher micron count than white wool. So you would want something that, you know, whereas you might have a white wool that is 23 microns, maybe a dark wool is going to end up being 25 or 26 or 28. And usually if you're trying to spin something for the longest thread competition, I'm looking for something that is under 20 microns. I'm looking for 15 to 18 range.
That's nothing that we have. We don't. I think our lambs, I think we've been right around, I think we got to 19 with 1 or 2 lambs a few years ago.
Wow, yeah, that's something.
But that was just the lamb fleece. That doesn't repeat subsequent years. And it's interesting you make the point about the darker wool having a higher micron. I can attest to that based on the micron results we do on our flock every year. You know, as you look at the different colors, the blacks and the morettes are always going to be ever so slightly higher in the micron than the fawns and the whites. So that's interesting. I heard that you said that as a known thing within.
Sorry? I have one Shetland sheep. I mean, I've got 4 sheep, not a big flock, but Garrick is kind of an oatmeal color. I'm not sure what color that makes him in Shetland, but he's kind of an oatmeal color.
I'm sure he's lovely. All right. So what do you do with lace weight yarns? What are the typical applications for lace weight?
Typical application is probably to wind it into a skein and show it off at your next spinning meeting.
Okay.
This is what I would do with it. And they probably just roll their eyes and say, okay, yeah, I know, we know you can spin thin. Okay. It's actually harder to spin fatter after you've learned how to spin really thin. Much more difficult. I need to expand my range in the other direction once in a while. But lace weight shawls. I love shawls. I don't get much chance to wear them because first of all, we never go anywhere, and second of all, the pandemic really hasn't changed a whole lot of that around here. We still don't go anywhere. We never did. But shawls, scarves, you can weave with it.
That's what I was wondering. Is there a use for it with the weavers?
Oh, there certainly is. I mean, you can, if you are weaving something with a slightly thicker weft than your yarn, you can certainly double it or triple it as weft. So if you have a really thin warp, you can make your weft match that. You can weave really, really fine stuff. textile petals make that really easy. Depends on the responsiveness of the loom and whether or not the strength of your lace weight is going to stand up to being tensioned as warp. So if it won't stand up to being tensioned as warp, you can certainly weave with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
what about crocheting? Do you know, is there?
You could certainly crochet with it because crochet hooks go down really, really, really fine. And the same thing, you could do shawls, scarves, probably doilies. I'm not sure if you'd want to, depends on what you're doing. You can spin really fine with cotton as well. It doesn't have to be wool. It's a whole different technique though.
Oh, really?
Entirely, yeah. It's not any more difficult than learning to spin wool, but yeah, you can spin really fine. As a matter of fact, I think somebody had done a longest thread competition entry with wool that had been spun on a charka. Oh, and they also allow stuff besides wool now. They allow alpaca. So now they have multiple categories. They have a wheel spun for wool. There is no longer a distinction between white and colored wool. They have wheel spun for alpaca. They have spindle for both alpaca and wool. And there is a category now for e-spinners.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah, because you can decrease the draw-in for an e-spinner. I have a Nano right now. I had a Hanson before. I got one of those little tiny Nanos, and hoping for a Daedalus sometime in the future. Not right now, unfortunately, but there will be one eventually.
So with an e-spinner, you're going to adjust your brake tension to be very light, and then you're going to increase the speed, right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that can certainly save, like, miles and miles and miles of treadling. But I keep thinking maybe you could, like, put your Fitbit on your...
Does that count? All right. So this has been so great, Caroline. So I just want to let you know, I think I talked to you about this in the beginning before we went on. What I'm doing is I have 0.25 ounces of wool that I scrounged up because I'm kind of getting to the bottom of the barrel here. Shearing isn't for another couple months. And I'm spinning a 2-ply lace weight with the lace kit that I just installed on my wheel. And now, having talked to you a little bit, I'm going to be modifying the way I draft.
So get your lap cloth.
Yep. And I'm going to also, use the lap cloth. And I'm also going to loosen up the tension quite a bit. I think I've got it too much because I am breaking quite a lot. So I think that I'll modify that. And then I'm going to see what...
No, that might not be it. So you need just enough tension to draw in. But if your thread is breaking, you may be building up either not enough twist or too much twist. Because even though it's really, really, really fine, the tension that you're introducing with a lot of twist, which you really need to hold that together when you're doing 5 or 6 fibers in there, can break it very easily. So yeah, you do have to modify your draw in, but make sure that you're not overspinning it as well.
Okay, so maybe I need to take a look at the whirl, maybe go a different groove, like a bigger groove on the
possibly
whirl.
Did you put the little tiny whirl on there?
I did, yes, I did. Yeah. That was a struggle. If you saw the video, I hadn't taken off the whirl from my wheel since I got it 20 years ago. And so I was really fighting, but I finally did get it off at the end. And so I think I have it on the second smallest right now. So maybe I'll move it up to a larger.
Not only move it up, but pay attention to how fast you're treadling, because this is going to increase the speed of the wheel dramatically over the whirl that was on there. That is some really small grooves in there.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to compare the two sets, the 2.25 ounces, and see which ones I get the longest thread with. And I'll let you know. I'll put up pictures on my feed once it's all spun up and washed. You have to wash it before you count the length, right?
Yes, I would wash it out. I also I do not spin in the grease. I've never been a grease spinner. My reasoning for that is that the grease actually takes up length along the fiber. It takes up, it adds to the diameter of the fiber.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of yarns that were spun in the grease and washed, and then yarns that were washed and then spun. And when the yarn in the grease is washed, it tends to collapse a little bit because the grease is being washed out.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so I think that detracts from the structural integrity of it.
Are there any rules as far as how you count the length in terms of like if you stretch it, or is it supposed to be, you know?
When they do it, there's a video somewhere of how they measure it, and it's going around a wheel. It's similar to a yardage counter when you're moving, where the yarn comes in, goes around the wheel, and goes out, and the wheel moving is what measures the diameter of the yarn. So as part of the longest thread contest, it can't break. So if you have 500 yards of yarn and it breaks 300 yards in, that's the end of your entry.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, it has to be as a 2-ply, strong enough to stand up to being measured. And they've actually invented finer measuring instruments as over the course of this. I think I became interested in the longest thread contest in about 2009. Still have not made an entry yet. Still working on getting what I consider fine enough to actually submit an entry. So, but there are historical records going back that shows you how things have changed. And I know somewhere out on the web, there's a video of the measuring device they use.
Interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting.
So cool.
So it has to hold up to the measuring device. Usually when people actually submit an entry for the longest thread contest, they will wind it onto a ball, like a styrofoam ball, so that it's not wound on itself, right? You don't want that little butterfly in the middle. That takes a lot of tension. So they'll take a styrofoam ball, and if I were them, I would probably put a piece of fabric around it so that the little bits of styrofoam are not catching that fine, fine, fine yarn, and wind it around the ball. So the people who are measuring will put it in a basket next to the measuring device, and it'll come off the ball a lot more smoothly than it would come off of a skein or something like that.
So interesting. Well, this has been great, Carolyn. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and just all your expertise and experience and stuff. It's been really fun.
It has been wonderful, and I'll tell you, the Majacraft rose that you have there in the background is I've been spinning for a long time. Like I said, 1997, I think I started. This has been my favorite wheel ever. I mean, I've had everything. I've had everything from an Ashford traditional to a shocked matchless, and I ended up waiting. I sold my matchless to buy a rose.
Really?
I think it is among the, not that you can't. I know there are people who spin longest thread contest and really, really, really fine stuff on every wheel out there. This is just, it's my favorite. It's, to me, it's the most responsive. It's the easiest one to use. And the fact that you can have, I have a little gem as well. You can use the same bobbins on all of them. And plus they had the new colors that came out.
It's so fun.
So I just love those.
Yeah.
You be able to make things pretty, right?
Yes, of course.
It's the same thing as for my looms. I like the shocked bobbins, shuttles, and I ended up buying 3 of the purple stained ones for the shocked anniversary shuttles just because they're purple and that's like my thing. And they're just
your rainbows, right?
Rainbows.
Like the rainbow colors.
I like the rainbows, and I like purple. If I can have it in purple, it's going to be in purple. But for everything else, if I can get it in rainbow, that is my choice.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good luck with your spinning.
Thank you.